I spent the first 20 years of my life living somebody else's dream. When I was in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so when it was time for me to go to college, I applied for a university that everyone else was going to. And I chose a major that my friends were choosing. I didn't even really understand this idea of doing what would be best for me because I didn't know what was best for me. And when it came time for me to graduate college and choose an actual career, I chose a career that my parents thought was best for me. And even on a deeper level, beyond just the choices that I made, who I was as a person fundamentally was based off of what other people wanted. There was so little of me left in me at some point. And I really had to start taking a hard look at myself and asking myself, what the heck do I want out of my life? I was so focused on other people, so focused on other people's needs, other people's expectations, other people's judgments, that I never asked, what do I want? And it reminds me of a impromptu coaching experience I had once at a party. And this girl had, I don't know, somehow randomly figured out that I was a kind of like a part-time life coach. And she was like, all right, let's do a session right here, right now. And of course, we're all intoxicated. And I don't know why I said yes, but I did. And she proceeded to tell me this story about how she was living in New York City and she was having a great time. And she really had built up a bit of a life there and enjoyed it, but she had this career opportunity where she could move somewhere else. And there was some pressure from her parents to take this career opportunity, and she kind of felt like she needed to take it too, but she didn't really know what to do. And so she asked me, what should I do? And I was like, well, what do you want? And I think she got a little annoyed at that question. She was basically asking me, she basically said, look, I don't know what I want. That's why I'm asking you what you think I should do. And I said, no, I can't answer that for you. What do you want? And then she got more annoyed and she was like, how about you try and actually coach me instead of just asking me what I want over and over and over again? And to be fair, I was pretty new to this whole idea of coaching at that point. So I probably could have taken a different tact, maybe approached it a little differently. So I backed off a little bit and I was like, no, look, you know what you want. We always know what we want. It just gets buried under tons and tons and tons of other people's needs, other people's judgments, other people's desires, other people's pressures, other people's expectations, and we get lost in there. We lose ourselves and we lose what we want. And we have to do the hard work sometimes of uncovering what is it that I actually want from this scenario. And usually it's in there. You just have to quiet all the other noise, all the other fears we have about disappointing people, all the expectations we know that are on us or we perceive that are on us or that we put on ourselves. And we have to ask ourselves, really, truly, what do I want? If you don't know who I am, my name's Tishon Fernando. I'm a high school teacher and a teenage life coach. And today, I want to talk to you about judgment. Caring about what other people think. And when I think about, especially as a teenager, one of the things that was top of mind, one of the things I worried about the most, the answer was almost always, what are other people thinking about me? And the fact of the matter is that as human beings, we are all wired to connect because there are concrete benefits to fitting in. I think we all learn this at a very young age, that if you can help it, you don't really want to be that kid that doesn't have anyone to play with at the playground. There's something about it that just inherently feels bad. Every single movie about teenagers in high school includes a scene where the kid doesn't have anyone to sit with at lunch. And they put that scene in those movies because that's something we can all relate to. Even if we haven't experienced that, we know how bad that feels. We know we don't want to be the odd man or woman out of a situation. And what's more is our ancestors worked hard to fit in, because for them, it was a matter of life and death. Being a part of the tribe meant survival. And being kicked out of the tribe could very well mean the end of their lives. And so now we kind of do the same. And I think it's really, really important that we recognize and fully appreciate that we are not broken for caring about what other people think. We're just evolved. But evolution isn't always meant to serve the truth. It's meant to serve survival. Because the truth is that there are also a lot of concrete benefits to not caring about what other people think. Right? We can live more genuine, authentic lives. We can be more ourselves when we don't care so much about what other people think. And not to mention that in our day and age, one of the major communities that we're trying to fit into is the internet. And I don't have to tell you that most of the people on the internet don't know you, don't know me, and can't truly care about us because they don't really know us. And trying to fit in with the online community sometimes is one of the ways to get furthest from our truth. So the question remains, how do we balance this dichotomy of innately being wired to care about what other people think and being okay with caring about what other people think, but not caring so much that we get pulled off of our paths? Because I know that my life has gotten exponentially better the more that I prioritize what I actually think and what I actually feel. But even I, all of the time, catch myself caring a little bit too much about what other people think. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm surrounded by teenagers 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And we get close. We really develop strong interpersonal connections, and it's only natural to care about what these people think of me. And if I'm being as real as I can with you, I want my students to like me. I want them to respect me. But even I know that if I let that get too strong of a hold on me, if I start to act in ways purely just so that my students will like me, I'll never be able to do right by them. Because sometimes I'm going to have to do things that they don't like so that they get the experience that they need to be successful in life. And even on this podcast, I mean, if you go back and watch some of my older episodes, especially episodes like 1 through 5, the way I talk, the way I act, the way I move on camera, none of it is natural. And the way I am now, it's way more in alignment with how I actually talk in real life. One of the pieces of feedback I got from my family all of the time during those early days was, why are you talking like that? Like, that's not what you sound like in real life. That's not how you talk. Like, what's wrong with your mouth? Like, why are you moving it that way? And I don't know, back in those days when I first started, which, I don't know, it doesn't even feel that long ago, to be honest with you. It really felt like, my goal back then was to garner attention from the internet. I wanted my podcast to pick off. I wanted people to listen to what I have to say because I feel like I have something really important to say. And I wanted to help people. And it feels like, especially when you're first starting off, it feels like the internet rewards attention, not authenticity. Until you realize that the people that we give all of our attention to are always the most authentic of people. If you think about the biggest celebrities in the world, Jim Carrey, Mr. Beast, Will Smith, Jackie Chan, Ariana Grande, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Beyonce, not all of those people are celebrities, but they're people that the internet gives all of their attention to. Each of those people are uniquely themselves. And we love them for it. They don't always make the greatest decisions, and we don't necessarily have to like them all of the time, but you can't deny that the internet gives them a ton of attention. And as I started to realize that the internet rewards authenticity, I've started to be able to be more and more myself on these podcasts. And let's not forget that the internet, behind all of those screens, are just people. So when I say the internet rewards authenticity, I think it's safe to say that people also reward authenticity. We love that about each other. So what do we do about this? What do we do about this problem of needing to care but not caring too much? Now, the common advice that you'll find if you do a Google search is to just not care. And I think this is incredibly useless advice, just about as useless as telling someone not to worry or to calm down. Those things don't ever accomplish their intended purpose. They just usually make things worse. And again, caring is human. We're wired to care. We're supposed to care. And I don't think the goal is to actually stop caring about what other people think. The goal is to get selective about who gets a vote in your life. In other words, it's not a question of if you should care about what other people think of you, but a question of when should you care about what other people think of you. And I'm not gonna hold back. I'm just gonna tell you straight up. The solution is to shift your frame about judgment from something that can be used against you to bring you down to this version of what other people find to be acceptable. And instead turn it into something that we can use for our own good to become closer to who we want to be. So first and foremost, when someone is judging you, when someone is criticizing you, the way that we start shifting our frame about judgment is by first considering the source. Consider who is passing judgment on you. Consider who's criticizing you. And ask yourself, are they living a life that I respect and that I admire? And the reason we ask ourselves this question is twofold, right? Sometimes when people are judging us, they're absolutely right, because sometimes we're totally out of line. I think parents, especially when you're younger, they really play this role. Sometimes we're out of line as kids all the time. Honestly, that's a big part of being a kid, is just being out of line and getting back in line, testing our boundaries, figuring out how the world works. And ideally, your parents or whoever's taking care of you helps you through that process. Right? And as you get a little bit older, you get a little bit more independent, then it becomes your friends. They help you stay in line and you do the same, right? And I know it sounds bad and it sounds harsh that they do it through judgment and criticism, but I think that's what a good friend does. If they don't agree with what you're doing, they should tell you. They should be upfront with you. And I think as you get older still, if you're the type of person who likes to be in a relationship or maybe even have kids, then your family will become that for you as well. Just like you will be that for them. But you should never take directions from someone who hasn't been where you want to go. If the person that's judging you, that's criticizing you, isn't really in alignment with the type of person that you're trying to be, then why does their judgment have any value or any bearing on your life? This is just a random person. They might as well just be some random person on the internet who doesn't know you. And actually, this reminds me of how when I first became a teacher, or actually when I first made the decision to become a teacher, I was transitioning out of a couple of years of working towards becoming a doctor. And I didn't actually make it as far as going to med school, but as every person who has become a doctor or is in med school right now knows, it's a process and there's many years of dedication that you have to put up front before you even get into medical school. So many things you have to do. And most of my friends knew me as that person, as someone who wanted to become a doctor, someone who wanted to work in the medical field. And at some point, I moved away from being a doctor specifically and considered other routes of medicine. And then I took a further step back and found myself thinking about becoming a teacher because of a conversation I had with my mom. And truth be told, when she brought it up, it was really exciting for me because when I was in high school, being a teacher was one of the things I'd seriously considered doing. I had turned it down because of the money, because it didn't make nearly as much as some of the other professions I was considering. But at that point in time where I decided to become a teacher, I had become the type of person who cared way more about impact and way less about money. And I found it to be an acceptable trade-off. But some of my friends, they didn't really understand. They didn't really understand the transition, and they judged me for it. They criticized me a lot for this decision of stepping back from medicine. They saw it as a mistake. They saw it as a lapse in judgment, a momentary point of weakness. And as I said before, I see my friends as someone who necessarily needs to call me out on my bullshit. That's one of the expectations that I have from my friends, is that they're real with me about what they think. But I also expect my friends to understand me and understand my standards and understand where I'm going in life. And this friend in particular didn't. They never asked. They failed to understand what I was trying to do with my life and the type of person that I was becoming. And I learned the very hard lesson that some people will call your dream a failure just because it doesn't match their blueprint for success. And it's tragic because in the personal development world, we throw the word success around a lot. You know, you've got to be successful. You want to live a successful life, blah, 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 blah. But success doesn't really have a concrete definition. And actually, the best definition I've ever heard for success is getting your life to a point where you're living in complete authenticity with yourself. And I think that's perfect because success looks different for everybody. What is successful for me has something to do with starting a family and running my business and having an impact on education in the United States. My brother, who is one of my closest friends in the whole world, his version of success has something to do with becoming a lawyer, having impact on the legislative side of things about a completely different set of issues. And my other friends still have versions of success that I understand even less, but I still respect the hell out of because that's what they chose to live their lives for. So it's important that when someone is judging you or criticizing you, to take it one step further and ask yourself, does this person understand my version of success? Is this person going to help me become who I need to become to reach the version of success? And actually, there's a deeper question here. Because in order to determine if a judgment is a piece of information that's going to get you closer to who you want to become, you first have to know who you want to become. You first have to have taken the time to define for yourself what success looks like for you. The reason why, or at least one of the reasons why, judgment hurts so much, especially when you're young, is because you don't know what you want. You don't know who you're trying to be. So you're just trying to be who everyone else wants you to be. You're just trying to get and become and have what everyone else wants. And that sense of identity hasn't concretized yet. You don't know who you want to be. And so every little bit of judgment hurts. I think about how now that I've been working on this business venture for a little time now, when people criticize me about it, I'm actually pretty secure in myself about this. It doesn't really bother me. If people think it's silly, if people think it's dumb, if people think I don't have anything to say worth listening to, they can think that. I am pretty well aware that those people don't have much to offer me in the ways of getting me closer to living my dream. And the people that do, when they offer me judgment or criticism or advice, those people that really understand where I'm trying to get and who I'm trying to become, I take their advice pretty seriously. And I work to integrate it into my life. Which brings us to the next question you should ask yourself when someone is judging you or criticizing you, which is, do they have your best interest in mind? And I know this is kind of obvious, but a lot of people are simply just thinking about what's best for them, even if they are living a life that you respect or are living a life that you want to live. Sometimes when they're passing judgment on you or criticizing you, they're not really thinking about you. They're just thinking about themselves. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I don't think that there's anything wrong with thinking about yourself. And I think in order for the world to function properly, most of us should be mostly just thinking about ourselves. We should be more selfish. I think the world would benefit from a little bit more selfishness, actually. It would also benefit from more selflessness. But everything in life is a tricky balance. You just have to be aware that a lot of times when people are judging you or criticizing you, they're not thinking about what's best for you. They're thinking about what's best for them. And this is highly contextual. One example that pops into my mind really clearly was when I was in high school and I had made my first really good female friend. And there was nothing romantic. There was a lot of love, but it was all platonic. And I wanted to invite them to a cultural Sri Lankan party that my family and the Sri Lankan community was throwing. And I was excited to bring her, show her how we like to party, how we like to live it up. And I told my parents, I asked my parents if I could bring her. And they were really hesitant. I mean, they were really against it. And I was kind of confused at first. I didn't really understand because, you know, if this person that I was trying to bring was like a girlfriend or something, I would get it. Because, you know, bringing your girlfriend to meet your parents and the rest of your cultural community is kind of a big deal. But if it's just a friend, I mean, who cares? What's the big deal? But after questioning my parents a little bit more, I came to understand that they were thinking and worried about what other people would think. Because what I failed to understand at that point in time was that in Sri Lankan culture, you don't even talk to a girl unless you're seriously interested in them. That's just kind of how our traditionalist culture was back then. I'm not so sure what it's like now, but when my parents were a kid and when a lot of our Sri Lankan community where we live were kids, that was the reality. And so they were worried about what the Sri Lankan community would think about this girl I was bringing to the party. Because even though I might know that she's just a friend, and even my parents might know she's just a friend, the community, they wouldn't know. And even if I told them, they wouldn't believe me because they would be looking at it through a completely different cultural context and frame. And in that moment, my parents, who are always so supportive and always thinking about what's best for me, were thinking about what was best for them. And again, I don't really blame them for that. I think that that's totally fine. But it's something that I have to be aware of. And in the moment, their judgments, their criticisms of me wanting to bring this girl to a party, I didn't need to take them so personally because it wasn't really about me. It was about them. They were worried about their own social standing, which I think is pretty normal for most people. But I also learned another hard lesson, which is that sometimes the people who love you the most are also the ones that are most afraid of your authenticity, because it threatens the version of you that they know best. Especially when you're on this path of personal development, of growing and changing, your version of authenticity is going to change. Who you are fundamentally as a person will change. And that will be uncomfortable for the people around you, especially the people who really know you and aren't necessarily changing with you. They're really going to feel like you're changing and your relationship with them is changing. And change for all human beings is uncomfortable. And so that's something that you have to be aware of. As you're moving through your personal development journey, you're going to get judged. You're going to get criticized. It's a part of the process. It's not something that you can avoid. Even if you didn't change, the people who are changing are going to criticize you. So you can't avoid it. You have to learn to find the value in it. Don't ever take what someone says about you at face value. Always think critically about it. Because as you experience more judgment, you'll realize that no one ever sees you clearly. No matter how well they know you, they always see you through their own lens of life, through the lens of their own past, of their own pain, and of their own programming. People always have a frame in which they think, in which they talk. And this is one of the big reasons why miscommunication is a thing. In every instance of communication, there is what the sender is saying and what the receiver is hearing. And as we all know all too well, those two things aren't always the same. Because the sender is saying something in one frame of mind and the receiver is receiving it in a completely different frame of mind. I think nowhere is this more apparent than in text messaging, which is why you should never text message a serious conversation unless you just absolutely cannot have it face to face, right? And even if you can't text, at least call, because then it's easier to share with each other what your frame is, right? Someone might send you a text and it seems kind of snarky and maybe a little mean, but they're just joking. Or maybe they straight up don't realize that they're coming off that way. And you take it completely the wrong way. I mean, that's happened to all of us on both sides. Regardless of how you're communicating, it's going to happen. But you can at least minimize it somewhat when you're talking face to face. But also that was a bit of a tangent. The point is that everyone has a frame. I think somewhere where it's come into contact and impacted me is I'm a pretty happy person. Some people might even describe me as bubbly. I'm someone who whistles a lot or hums or sings. I'm generally smiling and joking and pretty playful, and I play pranks on people, and I like to think of my spirit animal as like a monkey. Just, kind of monkeying around. That's kind of how I live my life. Some people don't like that. And it can be kind of off-putting because, why are you turned off by my happiness? Like, why is my being happy and living life in a playful manner bothersome to you? But it makes a lot of sense if they're not in a place in their life where they can feel that way too, right? It can actually probably feels a little demeaning when someone is happily and bubbly and you just aren't there right now in your life. And I don't say that in a judgmental way, but temperament is a real thing. And that's happened to me plenty. I think another place where it happens a lot is, some people are shy. Some people are really shy, but a lot of times that gets interpreted as standoffishness, as aloofness, as someone thinking that this person thinks they're too good for us, and so they're not going to talk to us, or that they have something to hide, or that there's something suspicious about this person. Human beings, we hate space. We hate unknown, so we just love to fill it with random shit. But you start to master judgment when you realize that there's usually something to learn, either about them, the person passing the judgment, or about yourself. And you got to learn to change the questions and the self-talk in your own head. When someone criticizes you, don't ask, what's wrong with me? Ask, what does this tell me about them? Because when someone is judging you, this is an opportunity to learn about them, especially if this is someone in your life that you care about, that you plan on keeping around. You can learn a lot by what they choose to judge you on, what they criticize you about. You learn about their fears. You learn about their past experiences. You learn about how they see the world. Judgments are rich in interpersonal experiences and stories, if only you're willing to dig. But you have to let go of that ego piece and not take things so personally. And on the other side, if you do take it personally, if a judgment really hits you, remember that judgment only sticks when it hits something unhealed. If someone is judging you about something and it's a part of your life where you feel pretty secure, it's not going to bother you. You're not going to care. It's just going to be noise to you. But if someone says something judgmental or critical, and it's a part of your life or a piece of your identity or an aspect of your body that you're not really okay with yourself, then it's going to hurt. Because they're poking at a fear that you have, that you already have, that people are thinking about you, that people are judging you, that people are criticizing you, and now it's coming true, and this is so horrible. There's a lot to learn there, because sometimes we have blind spots. Sometimes they're poking at something we already know we struggle with, right? And it's a good indication that we have a lot of work left to do. Sometimes someone judges us, and it hits you, and you don't even realize this is something that you're insecure about. This is something that you care about. And I think that is another really great piece of data. I think about in college, I think this was my sophomore year, and I have always kind of hated how indirect we can be with people when we like each other. And I mean in a romantic context, but also kind of in a platonic context. If we like someone, or someone likes us, there's this horrible game we have to play of pretending not to like someone, but still showing them we're interested without letting them know that we're interested. And it's exhausting. And around that time in college, I decided I wasn't going to play that game anymore, that I was going to be courageous, and I was going to be bold, and I was just going to be open with how I was feeling. And I would tell random people on the street that I, thought they were cute and that I wanted to hang out with them. Sometimes people would think that was really cool, and sometimes they thought it was really weird. And when I told my friends about this, how I was just trying to be more open and direct with people, they totally shut me down. They thought it was so weird. And again, this friend in particular was, it was a South Asian culture. And in South Asian culture, I mean, it is weird to do that. You usually take a long time to get to know somebody before you express your interest. And, here in America, it's a little different. I think things are a little bit more sped up, but, still you kind of take your time. And generally, even in the United States, we're kind of an avoidant culture when it comes to expressing our feelings. But they were just, they really tried to shut me down. They really tried to tell me to stop, being so reckless, to take things a little slower. And, I wasn't trying to take things fast with people. I wasn't trying to get married in a week. I was just not trying to hide my emotions so much. But that really freaked them out. And again, it was another judgment that really had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own fears and their own frame of reference for how someone is supposed to live their life. And it's another instance where the life they were trying to live just didn't really line up with the way I was trying to live my life. And I'm happy to say that I didn't let that bother me all that much. And I'm still kind of that guy where, if I like you, I'll tell you. If I'm interested, I'll make it known. I don't really hide myself like that anymore. And it's led to a lot of wonderful experiences as a result. A lot of great friendships, a lot of good relationships. I think the other thing that we probably don't think about as much, but we need to, when it comes to letting go of judgment, is how judgmental we can be sometimes. Because there's definitely a whole thing going on here where the level of judgment that we put on other people is definitely in some way correlated to how judged we feel by others, real or perceived. And for me, and honestly, for everybody, the reality is that everyone judges. The important part isn't whether or not you judge. It's what you choose to do after that counts. I used to struggle a lot with getting to know people because I was scared of vulnerability. And to be honest, it's something I still struggle with from time to time. And one of my defense mechanisms is judgment, because I know it's important to have high standards. And one of the ways I can avoid being vulnerable with someone is if they don't meet those standards. And so, one thing my brain loves to do when I see someone that I think is attractive, or I meet someone that I want to get to know better, is I'll immediately start judging them. Mentally. I won't say anything out loud, but I'll mentally start judging them. And I'll mentally bring their value down so that they're no longer a possibility in terms of a relationship, no longer a possibility in terms of a friendship. And then I don't have to worry about being vulnerable. And it is a horrible coping mechanism. Trust me, I know it's not great. And I've really come a long way. But it's something that I still struggle with. But the way that I've been working on that is curiosity. Because while I can't really do anything to stop the judgments, they happen. I don't even think about it. I don't even control it. It just happens. It's just a reaction. What I do after that is I try to follow that judgment up with curiosity. Why does that person seem stuck up? Why does that person seem kind of stupid? Why does this person think that way? And I try to take it as far as I can. I will actually ask them, why do you think that? What led you to live your life this way? What is going on in that mind of yours? I try to really approach it with genuine curiosity to learn more about the person. And curiosity just feeds empathy so well. Because the better you understand why someone acts the way that they act, the harder it is to judge them. And the more empathetic you feel towards them naturally. Because a big part of empathy is understanding where the other person is coming from. Understanding how they're feeling. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And while the contexts in which we live in are different and the experiences that we have are different, they're also not that different. We all experience jealousy, shame, anger, hate, love, disappointment, depression, and rejection. Every single one of those are relatable experiences. You just have to understand why that person feels that way. And once you do, man, it's really hard to judge them. And it's really hard not to feel empathetic for them. And for me, I find that it really drives connection. And judgment slowly stops being so good of a avoidance defense mechanism for me, and my brain slowly starts to let it go. I'm not there yet. I will still judge you if I meet you, but I promise to ask questions after. I hope you got something valuable out of this. And if there's something that you're going through, some judgment that you're facing in your life, some criticism, just remember that I am rooting for you.